On the other side, though, UD, the very first thing you said was that the Mavericks didn't really look ready for this moment last night, and it looked like they were looking to Kyrie Irving for that leadership. He's the one guy who's had it. Kyrie having a tough night really seemed to hurt the Mavericks last night.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you're going down, a situation where you haven't been in those situations before and you're looking for a guy, you look to the guy that's been there before. You look to the guy who's been your emotional leader. You look to the guy who's connected your locker room. So when Kyrie struggled, I think that really made Dallas Mavericks even more tight. If you're on the other end, though, if you're Jason Kidd and you're looking at this game and you're saying to yourself, okay, we weren't the Dallas Mavericks last night. Somewhat of that is encouraging because if you're the Dallas Mavericks, then that's a maybe different ball game. It could possibly be a different outcome because they made the game close in the third quarter. But definitely from the jump, you're looking for Kyrie to be that guy that's going to be stable. Is probably going to be your most stable player. Luka's going to be 30 points, 10 assists every game, but you're looking for Kyrie to be that stabilizer, kind of like Drew Holiday is for the Boston Celtics.
One of the expressions we like to use on the show, Drea, is bad game or bad sign. Was that a bad game last night from Kyrie, or was it a bad sign that there was something in this matchup that does not favor him?
It was a bad game, in my opinion. I mean, we have seen Kyrie Irving bounce back from poor performances. So his ability to take information and also the crowd. Like I know he mentioned he thought it was going to be louder, but going back to that environment, that's hard to do. I would imagine it was hard for him to do. Now he's going to get a second shot at it. I expect him to play better in game 2.
Wendy, how loud was it?
It was pretty intense. I don't know how I would rank it in all the times I've been to Boston, but it was pretty intense in that game. And I think they actually generated quite a few open looks for Kyrie Irving, and we saw some of them right there. Look, the discontinued dribbles on the one pass he threw that looked like it hit something on the way and was like 30 feet offline. Obviously, that to me was an indication he was a little off. But those open shots, I think that Dallas will lean on those and say Kyrie's not going to miss them. 6 of 19 is not indicative of the way he's played throughout these playoffs. And look, I know it's not, experienced veteran style to say you were rattled a little bit by the moment, but I think the whole Mavericks organization, including Kyrie, felt that last night.
Well, I mean, let me put the full screen number 1 up there just to give you a sense of the night that Kyrie Irving had. He had a minus 19 when he was on the floor last night, 2 assists, 0 of 5 from 3. All of these numbers, those 3, were his worst of this postseason, Allen.
Yeah, and he's got to get over this. Like, whatever it is, he's got to get over it because as we've talked about going into this, you remember Luka was saying this in the Western Conference Finals, how much he leans on Kyrie in moments like this when it gets tight. I know that I can depend on him, that he trusts him. And as Drea pointed out earlier, when Luka looked like he was dying to get a second win and couldn't, he didn't have his legs early in the game for whatever reason, goes to the bench, that's generally when you do rely on the guy that does have all the experience. And for Kyrie, he could not himself also generate anything offensively to give his team just some reason to feel calm. And then when you see him also looking rattled,
yes,
that almost makes everybody else more rattled. Like, man, even he's rattled?
Well, that's an important point. And Luka, a lot of stuff with the refs early in that game. UD, I'm wondering your sense of the body language. I'm a big believer in watching the body language, especially in a moment like this. What did you see from the Mavericks last night in the body language, Udonis?
I mean, we're huge on body language in Miami, and that's something that we used to focus on when we used to play against the Boston Celtics. We used to always focus on Jason Tatum's body language. Is he focused on the game, or is he focused on arguing with the refs? And amazingly enough, Jason Tatum has made that growth. You don't see him arguing with the refs as much anymore. You see him focusing on the game in between the lines. Now Luka has to go down that path. He has to focus on the game between the lines. You don't have time to focus on what's going on with the referees. Next play speed, on to the next. You got to have a short memory, and you got to be the leader of the pack. These guys are watching you. These guys are watching Kyrie. So at no point can you show weakness, especially in the finals. Arguing with the refs is a sign of weakness.
Oh, yeah.
Also, too, just think about it. Luka, when he's going, right, and when you're in the game, even when it's a close game and he's hitting tough shots, he'll make a face. We saw one smirk by Luka when they started to cut back. But when Luka does this, or he makes a face, or he says something to the crowd, that ignites his teammates. They were in such a deep hole that when Luka got into his bag, he couldn't even flex his muscles because they were still so far behind. So there was really no momentum from Luka, and Luka couldn't even bring that type of energy, that type of swag, that type of confidence. He couldn't even bring that because the hole was so deep. So there was no opportunity because he knew.
Yeah, it's that he felt it too. Like I'm not feeling it. Like I'm not feeling. I'm trying, but I'm not feeling it. And as we just showed that roll, a lot of those shots that we just showed, he normally makes those. Like step back threes, corner threes. even though some looked a little contested, he normally, like this shot right here, that step back three. How many times we see that as a make against Minnesota, the best defense in the league? Here's one right here. That's an easy one. Come on, he's not even jumping into that one. He just misses it when you're not feeling it as a shooter. Look at that. That's a step back. I know it's good defense, but this is all what he normally does, and he just had no feel. You could see his legs weren't under him. There's a lot of things here over the next 2 days that he's going to have to figure out.
What I will counter is we saw him do that against Minnesota, but what did we not see him do against Minnesota was work on the defensive end. The Celtics did such a great job at making Luka work on the defensive end. So now he's got less energy, he's got less lift, he's got less locked down on the offensive end. So making Luka work defensively makes him struggle a little bit offensively. At least that's what game one seemed to show.
Let's talk particularly about Kyrie Irving, because Luka winds up only the one assist. We'll talk about it. Kyrie was the guy with the playoff experience, was the guy with the finals experience, hit the single biggest basket in the history of Cleveland basketball. He was the one guy you thought might come out and play better last night.
Yeah, and he was rattled. So once you see that guy rattled, the one guy that does have experience on your team, a lot of the other ones, including the extremely young Derek Lively, who you could see he was out of his head. He was constantly arguing with officials. Luka early on, like you mentioned, Drea, it looked like, there's a different air of the NBA Finals. UD can certainly speak on this, but it is just a different air, and it felt like he was trying to get a second win that he just could never find. Let me sit down for a minute and kind of get my bearings. And then you have Kyrie that usually in those situations will go, all right, I got it, tag in, right? We saw it in the Western Conference Finals. But when he tagged in, he got nothing but pinned. There was no chance for him to do anything in this game because of the defense that they played. And that's why you have to give credit to Missoula and to the Celtics defensively. But they look to Kyrie in these moments to step up and give them some confidence by making shots that he normally makes. He couldn't do it either. He had the team worst plus minus when he was out there. So once you see that as the Mavericks team, that's when you wonder, is anybody going to be able to get it going?
Well, think about this, Greeny. If we were having a show, say we were having the biggest show of the year, the biggest show we've ever had, right? And you came in and say one camera broke and we can't hear somebody in here, and you were freaking out or you were rattled or you were uncharacteristic, none of us would know what to do because we're looking at you. If you were like, I don't have my notes, nothing's working, nothing, and you're dropping stuff and you're fumbling over your words and you're not acting like yourself, both Alan and I would be like, well, what are we supposed to do? Like, we can't do anything about this. That's what the Mavs looked like. The person that they lean on and look to with the most experience was uncharacteristically bad. And no one else knew how to recover from
On this show, we usually call that Tuesday, but that's a whole other, conversation. UD, to sort of put a ribbon on this part of it, because I don't want to not talk about the Celtics because they were spectacular and Porzingis was spectacular. But, my old friend Mark Schlereth, who played in a bunch of Super Bowls, used to say to me, the team that can make it just a football game first is always the one that wins. You have all that build up, all that hype, you run on the field, and until you start playing, it's everything else. And then once it just becomes a football game, then that team is the one that's going to win. Again, you've played in these finals games. It looked like the Celtics started playing a basketball game before the Mavericks realized, hey, we're just playing basketball out here. And it sounded like their coach was trying to deliver that message.
I mean, from the jump, I saw a possession where the Celtics got about 4 or 5 offensive rebounds, and they were just the aggressor from the beginning of the game to the end of the game, taking to fight to Dallas on both ends of the basketball court, being very tedious about the matchups that they want offensively. Yes, they attacked Luka, which nobody did. The Clippers tried to, but Minnesota didn't attack Luka. So they got to everything that they want. And Porzingis was amazing from all 3 levels, from the 3, from the mid post, from the short elbow post, from the block. He did everything that he had to do. And on the other end, we got to shout out Drew Holiday as well. Yes, Kyrie had a bad game, but out of 29 possessions, he only scored 4 points on Drew Holiday. So some of that was Kyrie having a bad game, and some of that was the Drew Holiday effect.
Yeah, that's the point I was trying to get to earlier here. Was this a bad game or a bad sign for Kyrie? That's not meant to be a knock on him. He's a brilliant player. He's been sensational. But styles make fights. And as big as he plays, he's still not that big. And the Celtics have a lot of big guys in that backcourt they can run at him. So that was tough. Let me put a ribbon on this part of it just by letting you hear Jason Kidd at halftime last night. Here's Kidd, the coach of the Mavericks, who has by far the most finals experience of anybody, candidly, playing in this series. And you could hear him sort of imploring his team just to play ball. Listen.
The other part, let's have some fun, right? We're acting like we never, it's basketball. Have fun. We're going to win the third quarter, and then we build on the third quarter, and then we win the fourth quarter, all right? Just understand, this is not us. Go.
So you could see he sort of felt it, and as UD said, he started to say, we're acting like we've never been here before, and then he realized, oh wait, we've never been here before. So that's the Maverick side of it. But we've come too far without giving all the credit in the world to the Celtics, and in particular to Porzingis. And if you saw that smile on his face, Drea, I know that really reverberated with you.
I took so much joy in watching Kristaps Porzingis come into the game and be himself. There is nothing worse as a player than not feeling like yourself and not contributing. And those two things happen when you're injured or when you're coming back from injury. The chance of that happening is very high. You don't feel like yourself. You don't feel like you're doing what you need to do on the floor. You don't feel like you're helping your team. And it is a terrible feeling. As someone that in 5 years, I had an ACL, I had a separated shoulder, I had a broken bone, I know what it feels like to come back from injury and not feel good at all. He comes back from this injury and he looks like he feels amazing. He's smiling. He's getting to his spots. He's elevating over the defense. And then he is blocking shots on the defensive end. He's moving well. Watching Kristaps, I was happy for him. Just as someone, an athlete that's dealt with injuries, to watch him play with joy and be effective on the floor for his team.
Wanna try to boast at what I look like. Take them down, try to wear, I pull up long range. Jimmy with the heat, I'm on fire. It's NBA over here,